Happy 2023, my friends. We just got out of COVID, and multiple tsunamis are waving up already. Inflation, climate change, populism, conspiracy theories, and Putin. Putain. Winter is coming, my friends, and recently with EY, we had the chance to meet with a very, very brilliant speaker. His name is Rawi Abdelal. He's a professor at Harvard Business School, and he came to Bucharest. And he told us at the Teatro Național, he told us, look guys, the world is getting in such a bad direction that I estimate the chances of having the world going through a phase of deglobalization, I estimate the chances to be 70% for this to happen. So brace yourselves, my friends. So this evening, Romania's insider managing partner, my friend Andrei, and our 12 panelists, they will tell you how bad the fire is in our own house, which is Romania. And before I ask Andrei to get on stage with the panelists, please allow me to share my humble 2 cents on what I think is going to happen next year. I believe that at the age of abundance of information and at the era of social media, it is too easy to get distracted and depressed by the constant flow of bad news, by alarms, by red figures, by conspiracy theories again, by populists from far left, by populists from far right. So I have a suggestion to make, my friends, before we start the debates. What about we see next year with the eyes of startup entrepreneurs, like entrepreneurs do? How is that? By just turning the challenges ahead into opportunities, of course. Because for entrepreneurs, as you know, danger and necessity are the parents of opportunity. Because crisis always brings opportunity, and the bigger the crisis, the bigger the opportunity. Uber, for example, and Airbnb, they had incredible success thanks to a crisis. The timing was perfect. When both startups launched, the world was going through a tough recession. People were looking for new ways to make money. This made them consider renting their homes to strangers or joining a network of drivers to make extra bucks. So when something bad happens, we always have 2 options. You look back on what's lost and you cry about it, or you decide to design, to build something new and make it happen. Be positive and optimistic, my friends, always. So let's build together beautiful opportunities in 2023 and do better business for a better world. Thank you, chère Laurence, Madame l'ambassadrice, de nous accueillir une fois de plus dans ce merveilleux Institut français. Merci, cher Julien et Loïc, for partnering with La French Tech once again. We feel like this place is our home now. Thank you for that. Thank you to our event partner, Romania Insider, especially Andrei, Irina, Ruxandra, and the rest of the team. Thank you so much. Thank you to our 12 panelists. A huge thanks for our sponsors. Thank you to our sponsor, Berede Asigurar, Blue One, Bucharest Real Estate Club, Cushman and Wakefield Equinox, Orvas and Partner, and 99 Worldwide. Thank you to our food and beverages companies, partners as well, Les Amis de la Fête, AM Social Space, One Beer Later, and Averecht. The later will provide later on delicious delights for our cocktail dînatoire that is going to start in 2 hours from now if we are not late. I'm counting on you. Let's have 2 hours sharp. Andrei, the stage is yours, but please, let's be positive. Let's be optimistic, my friend, and don't forget, from the ashes of crisis, opportunity will arise. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Greg. It's hard to follow up on your speeches as always, but I will try. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining us this evening to talk about not such a glamorous, let's say, topic, which is the perspectives for the economy. As Greg was saying, we are in the middle of what sometimes feels as a storm, with war at the border, with high inflation, volatile capital markets. But we also have opportunities. We have EU funds coming our way, Romania's way. We have the perspective of Schengen and OECD membership. We also have reasons to be positive. And we at Romania Insider, we try to show both sides of every matter. We don't focus only on the negatives. We don't focus only on the positives. We try to present a balanced picture so that our readers understand a little better the context. And that's what we are trying to do here tonight as well. That's why we have invited speakers from very broad sectors. We have tried to cover as many perspectives as possible. And we hope the information you will get here this evening will be useful for you in making decisions for next year. So I won't take this any further, and I would like to invite the speakers for the first panel on stage. For the first panel, we have 5 speakers. I will start the order in which they are seated. So we have Andreea Nica, who is Vice President of CFA Romania, who follows the macro trends, who CFA issues those very interesting macro sentiment analysis every month. So she will be sharing with us the macro perspectives. We have Cristina Martinescu, corporate lawyer, who will share with us the regulatory framework and how the changes that appear impact the businesses. We have Csaba, Bálint, board member of the National Bank of Romania, who will speak to us about inflation and how this impacts business and the perspectives for next year. We have Mr. Mihai Precup, Secretary of State in the Ministry of Finance, who will share with us what the Finance Ministry, the government, is doing to make the context a bit more attractive for investors. And we have Guillaume Macczak, hope I pronounced it correctly, who is partner and CFO of EY Romania, who is also directly involved in that EY attractiveness survey, and he will talk to us about how attractive is Romania for foreign investors and what can be done to make the country more attractive. I will start with the first questions, and my first question is for Mr. Deputy Minister. So what is the base scenario that the Finance Ministry is taking into account in preparing the state budget for next year? Because a lot of companies look at the official forecast and what the budget will look like to also determine their own steps.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here. I see so many young people involved in business, so it makes me honestly very, very proud and happy to be Romanian, to see so many startups being present. I just heard about the recent exit, which is amazing. Let me, in Gregoire's speech, he was a little bit mixed between optimism but also cautious. Let me be optimist. I would say that this year was a year of resilience. And a second point, very difficult for me to speak in English in French Institute. It's being a francophone. So I would say that this year was a year of resilience. So despite the different shocks that were mentioned today, the war, let's not forget about pandemics and about sanitary crisis. Despite all this, probably at the end of the year, we will close the year with an economic growth of 2.8, which is very much, I would say, relying on the agriculture sector, constructions, and also services. We Romanians, we rely very much on the agriculture, not only agriculture itself, but also the products derived from the agriculture. Next year, I strongly believe that it will be another year of resilience for the Romanians, showing that we are able to go above all these challenges. I would be optimist because, as we said, during the crisis, there are also opportunities. We see now opportunities to bring investments in Romania. Let's see what all the ships coming from Ukraine, they were looking for somewhere to park. So there was a huge demand and also an opportunity for Romania to bring investments home. That's why at the Ministry of Finance, we focus very much on the investments. This year, we had a record budget on investments, 80 billion lei, which was huge. And then we have also National Resilience Plan, which is 29 billion euros now, representing around 13% of the Romanian GDP, a great opportunity to become leaders in terms of growth in Eastern Europe. We are already since a couple of years, despite the crisis and despite the challenges that we had, but still we have a lot of opportunities. If we implement all the reforms mentioned in this National Resilience Plan, then we might bring all these 29 billion in the country. I think very important point in order to mobilize all this capital, because we don't face an issue in relation to the capital, because you mentioned about the budget. The budget is not a problem. The execution of the budget is a problem. In September was 30%. So there we face a problem in all the sectors. Another point, the liquidity is in the market. Romania has access to the liquidity. The main challenge is to find good projects in order to invest. For these reasons, we very much focus now on revive the PPPs, the public-private partnerships. Because the role of the private sector is not only to come with money, but main role is to come with ideas of the projects and also to come with expertise in order to mobilize this liquidity towards the specific projects. So I would look for the next year, honestly, very optimistic, because the liquidity is there, the access to the funding is there. Despite the crisis, we still have opportunities. I mentioned in the transport areas, but you see also in the sanitary sector, the opportunities are there. The key would be, if you ask me, to partner with the private in order to mobilize all this capital and to prepare these projects to be invested. And another point, very important, we have also access for the IFIs. One of my responsibility at the Ministry of Finance is the relation with the IFIs, international financial institutions, where they could bring not only liquidity, but again, expertise in order to prepare the projects and to bring investments in Romania. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I will now move to Andreea and ask you to share what the CFA and the macroeconomists are seeing as perspective for growth next year. And how does Romania fare in the international context?
I will first just address the question to Mihai because it's a debate. So when are we expecting the first green bond, first sovereign green bond to put Romania on the green bond issuers map?
We are thank you very much. It's a very, very important question, honestly, not to flatter you, but indeed it is. We are working very hard on this with the World Bank on two aspects. First, the regulatory framework. We need a European regulatory framework to issue these bonds. Second, in preparing a pipeline of projects, because in order to go on the capital markets, you have to go to present to the investors a pipeline of projects which will be financed with this funding. We see that it's very much a la mode. The green market, green investments in the last year on the stock market increased, in the last 5 years, increased exponentially. Therefore, we also want to tap into these funds. The main interest for the Romania government will be not really the amount of the funding, but the message, first, and second, the diversification of the investors. Because now we are discussing with investors buying the Romanian government bonds, which have specific mission to invest in Eastern European countries or in Romania or Romania. But going to the issuing green bonds, we will discuss with funds which have mandate in this perspective. So we will diversify
so a date, just
Sorry?
a date.
Agreed?
No, I'm just saying because this is so important and it's not just a crazy trend, this sustainability trend, and I think to have a sovereign green bond is really important because we have entrepreneurs here and they need the sovereign to lead in generating this kind of financial instruments. We also have a structural problem with our demographics, so we also need to show sustainability in the way we invest our pension funds, in the way we save our money. So I think for 2023, we would really appreciate the sovereign green bond. So that could be a game changer for our green economy, especially since you have a contingency with the resilience funds to spend 30% of them with sustainable projects.
Agree with you. Like a big chunk of the funds coming from the National Resilience Plan are located towards the green economy, and another 40% are located towards the digital economy. So it's a very, very important aspect. I can assure you we are working very hard with the World Bank in preparing the two aspects: the macro, the legal framework, as well as with the pipeline. If you ask me, the main challenge will be to identify a feasible pipeline. That for this you have to work with different ministries to present projects that we should all commit to be financed towards the green bonds. In terms of resilience and green aspect, I mean, I'm involved in different committees. One of the committees that I'm involved is the negotiation with OECD in terms of corporate governance. So here is another aspect that the state-owned companies, which are in total like 216 companies owned directly by the Romanian government, which generate around 7% of the Romanian GDP, they are now working to comply in terms of corporate governance with the OECD requirements, which is also involving some green aspects, some green commitments. And you have also from the Romanian Stock Exchange this year, probably you are aware, there is a green code that the companies listed on the Romanian Stock Exchange can voluntarily subscribe in order to be green compliant. And this code was worked with together, it's a common joint work with EBRD.
Yeah.
Thank you. Now coming back
to the more interesting
perspectives of Romanian growth.
Of course, the funny question about the sluggish economic growth and the peaked and long duration inflation and what is happening in the economy. Basically, things are boiling down to a cost of living crisis. So I think this crisis is different than the other crises because this is impacting everybody. And we are seeing this with the leading indicators. We are seeing this with the PMIs, with the purchasing managers indexes. We are seeing this with the consumer sentiment indexes. So everybody feels this crisis somehow. Of course, it was initially an energy crisis, is now a cost of living crisis. It impacts us. Unless we screw up somehow with the monetary and fiscal tools that we will use to tackle this crisis, I think Romania will navigate the 2023 economic environment better than EU. We had the other day the economic forecast from the IMF, which gives a global growth of 2.7%. OECD is somewhere around 2.2, so Romania should be above this unless we do something that is not quite good for the economy with our monetary and fiscal tools. And I think for Romania it's really important at this point to understand what is happening with the business environment, because I find the financial system in good shape. I think we are not reviving the global financial crisis. I think the financial system has good solvability ratio and will manage even an increase in non-performing loans. But the problem in the business environment is that the companies don't actually tap into the financial markets. I'm referring to the banking system, I'm referring to the stock exchange, and many of the companies in Romania actually use commercial credit. So they would negotiate commercial credit terms, they would push paying invoices to a maximum, and the level of the commercial credit is 2-3 times higher than the level of the financial credit. And this is not helping with the fiscal discipline a company should have. This is why I think for 2023 it's really important to make sure that companies do have liquidity, because in fighting inflation, what we use as a monetary tool is squeezing liquidity out of the markets, making funding more expensive. So basically, we are encouraging this increase in commercial credit because some of the companies will decide that the banking funding is too expensive. And I think this is important to tackle. And when it comes to the population, what is really interesting is that the labor market has been quite resilient. We had some companies announcing layoffs, but in the meantime, we had a good inflation of salaries. So the latest data was that the salaries had an inflation of around 14%, which helped with the burden of the actual inflation. So that means, of course, we are discussing about the increase with the average salaries. That means in some industries, salaries increase more and in others increase not that much. But this helped a lot with the burden when it came to cost of living and when it comes to what it means for us to pay our bills. So I find a lot of pessimism with the leading indicators from the companies, from the population. At the same time, I think Romania will navigate 2023 better than EU, which is expected to grow 0.5%. So basically nothing. So Europe is now the sick child of the world because of this dependency on Russia. And when it comes to geopolitics, I'm not an expert here, but I think the black swan might come from China, because we are realizing now that our dependency on Russia for energy brought us to this place where we are now. But our dependency to China, it's so much more different and complex. So we are discussing about a sustainable transition. We basically rely on China for everything that could make us sustainable. So they control the rare earths, they control lithium, whatever. So it's really important for Europe to find a way to be sustainable on a standalone basis. And for Romania to keep an eye on what's happening with Europe and just to find the best mix of monetary policy and fiscal policy to support the economy and the population, at least for this winter. Maybe things will be better from the second quarter.
Thank you, Andrea. I will now move to Csaba for the monetary view on the current situation, because inflation came up at your both previous speakers. So how is inflation looking right now? What are the perspectives for next year? And is this fighting inflation, is this affecting somehow economic growth perspectives for next year?
Good evening, everyone, and thank you very much for the invitations. I would start with some good news, and I think that there is light, or there is some light at the end of the tunnel. In the past few months, headline inflation hovered in the range of 15-16%. Probably you feel much more than that because there are several segments in the consumer basket which increase more. For example, food inflation is much higher than that, or energy prices increase more than this 15-16 average. But with the latest data, we think that there is a plateau. A plateau has started to take shape. And at the end of this year, in the beginning of next year, we could see this plateau, this inflation peaking. And after that, later next year, we could see a gradual slowdown of the headline data. In our latest forecast from November, we expect a single-digit inflation for the end of next year. It's very close to 7%. Of course, uncertainties are quite high. And 2024 would be the year when inflation will be or is expected to be very close to our target. Our target is 2.5 plus minus 1 percentage point. Before entering into the details and explaining why this inflation trajectory could happen in the following period, I think it is important to look at the big picture, to the context. And in general, about this inflation, it is very important to note that this is coming from global factors. And so this is not the fault of the countries from our region. This is primarily this inflation is due to global factors, including geopolitical events. First of all, when we look at the demand side of the economy at global level, the recovery from the pandemic was quite rapid, surprisingly rapid. So we had, and we have some excess demand at global level. On the production side, in 2020 and last year as well, we had very severe bottlenecks in the supply chains. We also had energy crisis, war, with spillover effects on inflation. So putting these together on the demand side, very strong demand on the production side, several bottlenecks, several problems, and we got to this really high inflation. So inflation is a global phenomenon. In the case of Romania, inflation, of course, is really high and above the Eurozone average. It is also due to the structure of the consumer basket. But when Romania is compared to other countries like Baltic countries or other sea region countries, our position looks relatively well. In the EU, in the group of the EU countries, we are on something of the 10th position. So it's not, in relative terms, it's not as bad. Last year, in the case of Romania, we saw the direct impact of higher energy prices. So if energy prices go up, this has immediate impact on households. That was the key driver behind the acceleration last year. And at the end of last year and in this year, we also could see the indirect impact. So if we have higher energy prices, producer prices are going up, so we have also an indirect impact. Regarding the perspectives and why inflation is expected to plateau and go down after that, I think the first factor is that demand is softening, demand is weakening. It is happening on the external front, external demand. The global economy is going into a difficult period. Domestic demand is also is expected to be softer because higher prices has a negative impact on real purchasing power. Another factor, important factor behind this forecast is that supply chain bottlenecks are softening as well. In 2020, last year, supply chain bottlenecks were sky high. So there were a lot of difficulties. There are still difficulties, but we can see several signs that it is improving. And at the same time, final conditions have started to tighten. Higher interest rates makes deposits, makes savings more attractive. So this will also help to control the demand side of the economy, very important factor. And we can also hope that there will be no other big jump in energy prices. So in the past few quarters, past few actually half years, we saw exponentially increasing energy prices with a lot of volatility. Most likely volatility will remain with us. But I think that some kind of stabilization, so this upward trajectory will not continue, hopefully. So these are the key factors behind our inflation forecast. But also we have to note that there are very high uncertainties. But I think that compared to, for example, in August when natural gas prices skyrocketed, compared to that period, the balance of risks looks somewhat better.
Thank you. I will now move to related topic because Romania's economic growth in recent years has been strongly supported by foreign investments, and we have seen even recently some new investments coming in, such as the big Nokian factory in Oradea announced recently. We have also seen investors leaving the country, such as Exxon and now Enel. So I will ask Guillaume to share with us how attractive is Romania right now for foreign investors, and what can be done to make the scene more attractive.
Yeah, so first of all, one correction: I'm not the CFO of EY. Otherwise, if he reads something in the newspaper, he will definitely not be happy. But I'm dealing with all the other CFOs in Romania, but not this one specifically. Coming to the foreign investors, so I'm in charge of this attractiveness survey that EY is publishing at European level. And in some countries, in France specifically, where it's very used by the French government to promote itself, since France is the main destination for foreign investment in Europe. Unfortunately, not the case yet for Romania, but we work on it. And part of my job is to actually discuss with foreign investors. It's not only my job, but our job is to actually discuss with foreign investors when they want to settle an activity in Romania. I saw in essay, I think, figures which are very high. Congratulations, but the computation method includes the already existing investments. So if I lose 1 million and I increase my capital, then actually it's counted as a foreign investment by the government. So I'm not taking these ones. in account. And so I more or less divide by 2.5 the figure that is published by the Romanian government in terms of volumes. But this is actually a very good result nevertheless, because we did the same for the previous years. Romania was unattractive from 24th of February to more or less 15th of June. Very unattractive, especially for the US investors. When I was having a discussion with foreign investors coming from the US, they were actually telling me, oh, Romania, it's Eastern Europe, it's Russia, so we don't go there. So there is a bit of education to be done, and I think this is a necessity for Romania to advertise, and I think the current agency, Invest Romania, is not up to the challenge, and I've heard the Prime Minister announcing that there would be the creation of a new agency. He announced it, at least during the EY event Grégoire was mentioning earlier. And I'm very happy to see this. I'm personally involved in those discussions also, so I'm very happy that Romania can push the right image, explain that Romania is in NATO, which was not the case 25th of February for most of the people I was talking to, that Romania is in EU, which is advertised in EU but not outside EU, which is a pity because EU knows, and that Romania is resilient, and that's very true. And the reason for that is that more or less half the Romanians do not have a bank account. So all the figures that were mentioned before are taking only into account the people that have a bank account and are part of the globalized economy. But the fact is, Romania is resilient because when shops are too expensive, they go to the garden. So that's what's happening outside Bucharest. This is impacting mostly the cities, which is bad for the cities, for people in Bucharest, Cluj, Iași, Timișoara. But it's a resilient.
It's green economy. Yeah?
It's very green. So the good thing is that with that is that Romania is ready for the next step by not taking, they missed one step and they are ready for the next one. So which is very positive from my perspective at least. Since June, we see a lot of foreign investments, possible foreign investments, let's say projects coming where people are looking in the region. So not only in Romania. Who could be attractive. Romania has lots of advantages. They should push cost of labor, of course, for Western countries is one thing, and EU, NATO, etc., protection, GDPR compliant, etc. So there are a few compliance checks that are done. The other thing is language, very strong language base in Romania, and if you are looking for people speaking French, German, etc., you find more or less the people you need. There's one caveat to that, which is universities are not increasing the size of seats they have, being ASE, Politehnica, University of Cluj, etc. So the number of graduates remain the same when there is an additional need coming and an economy which is quite growing, and universities are not capable today of growing the size of their promotions, which creates a bottleneck definitely for the employers and investors that are coming. Some sectors and regions are saturated in terms of talent pool today, and it's not because people do not exist in the region, it's because people do not have access to the educational system. My, let's say, hope on that, being in Romania for 7 years, is that now we have someone taking care of OECD program. So hopefully something will have to be done on education, something will have to be done on financial education, which will bring people usually to the banks. And this educational part will take one generation, so no rush for 2023. It will take one generation. The question is which government will actually take a 15 years perspective. But the advantages right now of Romania compared to neighbors are really good. The sectors we see, supply chain is the first one. and Schengen will definitely support that. Supply chain and logistics. If we ask foreign investors which sector do they want to invest in, supply chain and logistics represents 42% of the investors. The second one, no surprise, is IT, and the third one is business services with 23%, something like this. The business services is saturating the promotion of universities as of today. Logistics is mostly for the western part of the country, Sibiu, from Sibiu to Hungary, to have a quick access to the real market, and there are some missing infrastructures mentioned by the investors on the east side of Romania, so the other side of the Carpats. And when it comes to IT, it's mostly relying today on the tax exemption that exists in IT and the possibility to find candidates. But the salaries in IT today are not as competitive as, let's say, the average labor arbitrage we have between Western Europe and Romania, in Eastern Europe in general, and Romania in particular. To come back to your comment, it's not a global crisis. It's the result of local decisions taken to have a global dependency. So the other thing also to think about is that we, all countries, I'm including the one I represent from my citizenship, at least in that, we decided to rely on external providers for lots of things. We decided to rely on China for production of goods. And right now we see the movement coming back, so we have discussions with investors for local production. They want to relocalize in EU, which I think is a very positive sign for the market and for the resilience. Maybe a bit less for the inflation because the cost may be a bit higher. So overall, very at least from my perspective, very positive impact on the, let's say, post-beginning of the war, because this war is far from being over, but very positive resilience of the appetite of investors in Romania today, and it increases because some flows were going to Ukraine are coming to Romania now. But in the meantime, how do we ensure that we sustain this with the right level of accompanying, let's say, private investors, ensuring that we have the proper communication outside with investment agency, foreign investment agency, ensuring that we have access to the funds. It's nice to have very big envelopes. The issue is that, are we sure we will be able to execute, as you were mentioning a bit earlier? So the execution part is a very important challenge in the PNRR and other envelopes that are open right now. So this is very important for everyone to understand that. Then, from a monetary perspective, I think 8% overall rate is actually quite high, but that's personal appreciation. If you have a 300k euro equivalent real estate mortgage loan, so I did the computation this afternoon, and you go from 2 to 8%, it's a 70% increase in your installment. This is what going from 2 to 8 means for people who bought last year an apartment. So I kind of disagree on the fact that we'll come back to 2.5%. I saw the BNR forecast, and I've read all the banks one. They are more between 4 and 5, let's say, as an average in 2024. So I would put a bit of let's say, caveat on the 2.5 target, even at 1%. Makes 3.5, it's, I guess, a bit underestimated.
Thank you, Guillaume. I will now move, because you talked a lot about the context, the attractiveness context, but there are also a lot of regulatory changes because in the end, investors hate changes, but they are inevitable in some ways. So I will ask Cristina to share with us what keeps investors awake at night in terms of regulatory changes. What are the most important things that are expected to change in the following period with impact on the businesses?
First of all, thank you for your invitation. It is a real pleasure to be part of this panel among such bright minds. Considering the subject of the event, I would like to emphasize that we will always face ourselves facing or passing through interesting or challenging periods. The only difference stands in how we decide to approach these challenges and to approach them with our mind open in looking for opportunities or otherwise, or because in every challenge stands an opportunity, right, as Greg said earlier. Going directly to the core of the topic, there are a lot of changes in the regulatory framework which might be of interest for our audience tonight, but I will resume myself to some insights on the key aspects on the following fields: tax amendments, corporate laws, investment, and if the time will allow me, on the novelties in the employment field. Now, a hot topic on everyone's lips these days regards the tax amendments, and there are a lot of changes in this field, one of them being the definition of microenterprises. And the changes in this regard appeared because they aim to diminish the number of microenterprises on the Romanian market. And actually, the definition includes three new conditions as follow. Firstly, one company to be qualified as a microenterprise must have at least one employee, and its earnings must be under €500,000, which is a change by comparison with the previous legislation, which provided a threshold of €1 million. The second one regards the earnings of a company. So in order for a company to be qualified as a microenterprise, now its earnings must, at least 80% of its earnings must come from commercial activities other than consultancy and management services. And in this context, I look forward to see how the lawmaker will define consultancy services and what will be the precise definition of calculating the revenues coming from the performance of such services, and basically what will be the criteria to apply this legal provision. The second condition, the third condition actually, regards the shareholders of microenterprises, and I think we have a lot of investors among us tonight, and the change sounds as follows regarding the shareholders is that if if a shareholder is a shareholder in more than 3 companies, owning more than 25% of those companies, you must decide which of 3 companies will remain qualified as microenterprise and thus paying an income tax on 1%, and which company will pass from the 1% income tax on revenue to the profit tax of 16%. Now, going further to the second field, investment and financial, based on several questions we received in the past months regarding alternative methods of fundraising, I am happy to mention that we have a new regulation and a new national law on crowdfunding, which opens the doors for a new way of fundraising. And I will take the opportunity to congratulate Blink for their achievement in being the first company authorized in CEE as under this regulation. Now, please intervene and don't hesitate to intervene with any questions you may have, because as a lawyer I might have the tendency to talk too much. On the third field, on corporate laws, here, there are as well a lot of changes, but in terms of companies law, among lawyers, we debate a lot on this, on the company law and how it should be amended, significantly amended, in order to keep up with the business ecosystem, both in Romania and in EU and at the international level. And thus changes like the possibility to pay the share capital of a limited liability company in tranches with a minimum limit of 30% of the subscribed share capital to be paid before starting any commercial activity, or changes regarding the mergers and spin-offs, which are now under the sole responsibility of the trade registry. Meaning that no court will be involved anymore in these procedures, will significantly speed up the processes. Also on the trade registry field, there are some long-awaited amendments. There are some long-awaited amendments simplifying the procedures like incorporation of a company, mergers, spin-offs, or restructuring several registries, and also the responsibilities and liability of the trade registry employees, which now will be named as registrators. An important challenge we might face in the next year in this context is that there may be significant delays in solving the applications submitted to the trade registry, because from informal surveys, the trade registry employees are not so into these modifications, these recent modifications, because their responsibilities are increased, their liability is now increased, they are also asked to pass a new exam, and they also have to have law degrees in order to fill the new position as registrators. And there is no clear link between this increase of responsibilities and liability and their remuneration, because the law expressly provides that their remuneration remains under the same salary grid, the previous salary grid. And I will keep it short, I promise. And on the employment field now, since October current year, we have a new law on transparent and a new law on workforce, on regarding the working schedule. 2020 was a year which accelerated the transformation of the workplace to an extent never anticipated. So even if 2 years have already passed, now we are lucky to see that in our regulatory framework are clear and detailed provisions regarding flexible working schedules and also a new provision regarding tailored and temporary working schedules. However, as an important instrument for ensuring competitiveness and economic growth is the investment in human capital, I might say that the current legislation still fails to do enough to ensure the involvement of the companies in the initial training, nor does it to adequately involve the state in supporting companies' involvement in initial training with incentives and provision of facilities. To end my intervention on a positive note, I expect new laws on digitalization and green transition, as well as measures aiming to cut off the digital divide, Romania's digital divide among EU countries, and maybe measures to support the future generations of employees, like soft skills education and maybe scholarships on emerging topics. And why am I saying that? Is because Romania undertook an important set of obligations under the recovery and the resilience plan, and with more than 60% of the funds directed to these two main lines, digitalization and green transition, I would say that we might expect new business opportunities in these fields. So thank you, and thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Cristina. Because we are running behind schedule, I know that there are a lot of things to say, but I would kindly ask you to just refrain to 1 minute each if you have something to add to what the co-speakers have spoken tonight, or to answer to some of their.
Just to keep it. 1 minute. I'm gonna time myself. It's like doing sports, and you know when you're doing planking, 1 minute is, oh my God. I'm just very excited that we mentioned digitalization, green transition. So we are all aligned. A lot of work to be done. I think the Romanian Stock Exchange is turning 140. So oh my God, 140 years ago, somebody traded stocks in this country. We were, we were like all living in villages. So that's exciting. And I think what was really interesting to see when it comes to the financial spectrum is that we've always considered the fixed income space as a safe place. And now we understood in 2022 that is safe when it comes to credit risk, but when it comes to market risk is not as sexy as we might think. So I think for 2023, people in the financial sector should put more effort into explaining what volatility means, what people should be expecting with their mutual funds investment, pension funds investments, so that everybody is trying to protect their savings. It's really important in inflation to protect your savings. So I'm hoping that we will do a much more effort on this side. Thank you.
Wants to go next?
So many things to be said about all the points. I mean, I won't convince you. I mean, everybody I think agrees here that Romania benefits a very fiscal friendly environment, right? Grégoire, je sais pas où il est. En France, c'est combien le taux sur les sociétés? C'est 33. 33% in France. In Romania, it's what? 16%. So we have a lot of advantages from this perspective, and I agree with what you have said. The key point for Romania to attract investors is the human capital. Having people with European values, it's very, very important. And I also agree that the university should train more IT people. I think in Romania now we have like 80, but you know better than me, which benefit also fiscal advantages. What I would say is that from the Ministry of Finance point of view, this year was a record year in terms of financial instruments. I will just present a couple of them. We talked about many years about the National Development Bank. This year was the first time when this happened. So when this was approved by the government, and by the end of the year, I really hope that we will have it registered at the trade registry and it will exist at a single entity. So this will be a very important factor to unlock strategic investments, also to address market gaps, and mainly I would say to come with expertise in order to prepare those projects. Because as was said, it's not enough to have access to important funds, but it's also very important to have financial instruments to channel the funds and also feasible projects. Another point that you are, I am sure, very interested here in this room being at French Tech, it's the Fund of Funds, which is set up with the European Investment Fund, together with the Romanian government, 400 million investments in the private equity sector, as well as venture capital and green transition and infrastructure as well. Very important aspect, because we talked many years about the need to capitalize the Romanian companies. So at the government, we looked at the whole, if you want, at the whole capital structure of the company, at a standard company, and it came with right instruments. I used to give for many years classes at Sorbonne University, like around 5 years. I remember when I came here for the first time when I gave 16 years ago. I have my test for French to go to study in France. So as I was discussing with my students, it's very important to have equity response for the capital structure. It comes with the fund of funds. For the debt side, we have the guarantee funds. 4 billion euros this year for guarantee funds managed by the FNCG-IMM and FRC to address, and Exim Bank, so to address the companies which have ambitious investment plans. Exim Bank is addressing the bigger companies like 20 million lei turnover, and FNCG-IMM, the smaller ones, investments up to 10 million lei. Guarantees, financial instruments, equity, and I think you have more or less the whole range of financial instruments that we came this year to support the Romanian economy. As was said, I think the monetary policy during this time is important to unlock investments, to promote investments, and to protect savings. But the most important is to come with concrete solutions in order to unlock investments. So this is our point on this perspective. And also in terms of financial intermediation, I think also all these instruments will play a very important role in also motivating the banks to crowd in some funding. So together with the private sector, government, and the financial sector, I really believe that next year, despite the fact that I believe that will be a resilience year, will be also a year where Romania will still be one of the champions in terms of economic growth.
Thank you. Csaba, do you want to add something?
Yes, I would like to reflect, but I think that would take more than 1 minute. So I will try to focus on a common thing related to the next generation EU program and PNRR. Indeed, we are in a quite difficult situation. Besides inflationary risks, we have a war very close to our border. We can see a rewiring, or at least a partial rewiring of the global and financial sector at the global level. Financial conditions are tightening, borrowing costs are increasing. There is another risk from China, the property market. Lot of challenges on the long term. The green transition is something extremely important, probably the key question of the following few decades. So we have plenty of them, plenty of risks, but let's focus on the opportunities. And I think that the next generation EU program is a game changer for Romania. In 2000, GDP per capita in Romania was around 25% of the EU average. Now we are somewhere slightly above 70%, so it's a remarkable convergence. But going from 25 to 70 is a different thing compared to going from 70 to, for example, 90. And many countries, many economies can fall into a middle income trap. But using these funds, I think that that could make a big step forward. So it is a game changer. And summing all it up, I would say, drawing a parallel, I would say that we are in an ocean. Romanian households, entrepreneurs, we cannot control the external context, the global context. We have very limited influence on that, but we can manage our ship. We can put our ship into a good position in order to go ahead despite the global waves.
Thank you. Guillaume, any last?
I go very quickly. I just want to remind, because we have a few investors, we have a few startups that are starting in the room, that the return on equity that your investor will ask is the local interest rate plus the risk. So when it was free money, it was only the risk. At 0% interest rate, you ask only for the risk, and that's 4%. I don't know what we are required to you. So now you will have this interest rate that is clearly driving, which is protecting us, by the way. So I'm not against the high interest rate. I'm just comparing it to the Western Europe, and the difference for me is the country risk, and the country risk is more or less the fiscal instability. But the high interest rate is protecting us right now. We just need to ensure that it's not high enough to not revive a Volcker shock, as we call it in economy. But it will clean up as well, for good or bad, some investments that were made just because we had free money to invest. So I would expect the investment will lower a bit, because now we don't have this free money anymore, and we need rentability. So the investors should be, I guess, or at least will be, a bit more, let's say, looking into some details, and very elevator pitch will not be enough to sell a concept, I guess. But right now, this is the main risk. Actually, is the profitability, because of the cost, every cost going up, and you have to increase your rentability as a startup in the meantime. So for the very small companies that are trying to launch now, it's clearly a challenge to take into the business case.
Thank you, Cristina.
Yeah, I will keep it short. Hope that the next year will keep on this trend of open dialogue between businesses and authorities, on the trend of predictability and transparent legislation, and hope that also the banks will have clearer procedures on their know your client policies, because this is a serious problem Romanian companies owned by foreigners are facing now. So yeah, I will end it here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for your thoughts and for the perspectives you shared with us tonight.